and then all right. So warm welcome to everyone to this inclusion leadership webinar. We have with us here two fabulous speakers. We have Prof. Audrey, we have Prof. Margaret, and also we have our current Belmas chair, Deb, with us as well. Beth, which is also the inclusion leadership co-convener, is with us, and you say our long-term ever-present supportive member is with us here this evening as well. So today, sorry, let me just get, oh, I got it open. Yeah. So today we're going to talk about intersectionality and leading social change in education, professional learning to transform self, others, and the field. And we have invited Professor Audrey and Professor Margaret to be with us here this afternoon for this webinar. Is because they have published a fantastic book that is exactly on this topic. So thank you, Prof. Audrey. And to give a little bit of introduction about Prof. Audrey, she's based at St. Joseph's University in Pennsylvania, and she's an award-winning professor in ed leadership. She has served as a teacher, a program director, a college council chair, and a past president of a research association during her career. And what I particularly like about what Prof. Audrey has shared when she gave us her biodata is that her passion. So she states the passion is to help leaders find the genuine in themselves and become the leaders of their own lives. And she publishes frequently with her students. Thanks for that, Prof. Audrey, for supporting early career researchers and building the next generation of scholars. And she enjoys bridging research and practice. Together with us also is Prof. Margaret Grogan. Um, if you know Frontiers in Education, is a big journal, a very well-known, high-impact Q1 journal, and Prof. Margaret is the editor-in-chief for Frontiers in Education. So originally from Australia. Margaret, you will know that we are heading into a nice winter time now here. And she is from Chapman University, California. Prof. Margaret has served as a teacher, department chair, college dean during her career, and she reaches us and writes about women and underrepresented group and leadership. So thank you very much, Prof. Audrey, Margaret, for joining us for this evening, and well, we will really love to hear from you. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting us. It is our pleasure to be able to share our book with you. I am going to share the screen right now, if that's all right.
Sure, Audrey.
Okay. Margaret and I actually, we met through this project, and it has been such a pleasure working with Margaret, someone whom I really respect and who has taught me so much during this collaboration. And this really, for me, has been a passion project. Not only were we able to learn more about ourselves, but the chapter authors whom we had invited to join us, we also got to learn them and learn about them. And they also developed more awareness about who they are and how they're leading. So I am just going to share a bit that the objectives of today's talk is we're going to talk about the purpose of the book. And then Margaret will be talking about basically our first chapter, which kind of provides a research background about why it is important for us to think about leading social change from the lived experience of intersectionality. And then I will come in to talk about the new approach that we developed together around leaders' professional development for transforming self and others. We will share a bit of a gallery walk of the author's leadership stories that's in the book, and then hopefully we'll have time to then explore ways of engaging you in using this new approach. Margaret?
Thanks so much, Aubrey. Thank you, Donnie, and all the folk at Belmas. This is a real pleasure to be invited to give this overview of our book. I've had the honor and privilege to be at Belmas a few times and always enjoyed very much not only being in the wonderful settings that you have provided, but being able to participate in the rich, lively conversation. It's It's one of the forefront organizations in educational leadership. So thank you for hosting us this afternoon where you are. As Aubrey said, this was a project that drew us both together and happened to come about because of both her background in working with some students in the field in Philadelphia and my own working with superintendents, particularly in California. The purpose that we both hit upon, because we both cared so much about this, was that although, you know, sometimes it's strange for me because I've been doing this work for more than 30 years, and I think to myself, how is it that I'm still talking about the fact that although the numbers have increased, both of women and of individuals who identify as non-white, very, very few principals or formal leaders in the United States, at least, identify as LGBTQ, and certainly a minuscule number of those would identify as trans. Despite the fact that those numbers have increased, there is still very little awareness of how individual lives are shaped and made more powerful in many respects by some of these very debilitating, marginalizing experiences. And so from a theoretical point of view, what really prompted us, I suppose, to take the opportunity a couple of years ago to try to get this more into the mainstream was the fact that theoretically critical race work had reached the level of being applied more broadly across different lives, even though it began as a very powerful theory to help understand the African American or the Black context here in the United States. The application of such theories allowed us to understand much more, with much more nuance and much more, again, respect for the potential that individuals who have been shaped by very different experiences are likely to bring to the work of leadership. In addition to those theories which helped us, and of course feminist theory is right up there, because much of the work with feminist theory has been on looking at how individuals positioned and who identify as women have been in many ways not only marginalized, but actually expected to behave differently than the way they would maybe authentically wish to be leaders. In addition to many of these, the work of Pack and Ravitch, who have come up with a very helpful framework called the Critical Leadership Praxis, brought all of these theoretical and grounded work together for us to help the individuals who have chosen to be authors alongside us think about their own lives. So we brought the scholarship. We understood, having worked in the field for many years, done research, been professors of educational leadership, been in with our students, we understood and wanted to use the research that was out there, the theoretical grounding, to shape the way these current leaders thought about what they were doing. Intersectionality, as you can see from that particular slide, is a lens where power comes and collides, where it interlocks and intersects. It is not simply that there's a race problem here, a gender problem there, a class or an LGBTQ problem there. Many times that framework erases what happens to people who are subject to all of these things. So we grasped the moment, and fortunately, those who accepted the invitation to write chapters rose to the occasion. I do want to point out that different from some of the work that I've done in the past and Aubrey's done in the past and many other educational leaders have done, this book is a very non-hierarchical book. This is not a study. We didn't ask these educational leaders to talk about their own lives and then go in as so-called experts to make sense of them. We ask them to write about their lives as a chapter author. And so I think this, in many ways, this is a different approach to the way the very important work that leaders are doing is reaching a wide audience. Aubrey, are you talking about the stories?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Sure, because we believe that people think in stories, and we leaders really can develop better stories or narrative intelligence so that they can tell others about the issues that they're thinking about, and also using this way to kind of understand when their own thinking might be flawed, when they have biases, when they have assumptions, but also when they're able to actualize their values in action. So when we started building this collaborative project together, Margaret and I, we were just thinking, what is it that we are offering to the field? And then we realized we're offering this new way to approach leaders' professional development. And we believe there's a need for it because in the context of professional development for educational leaders, there are definitely limitations in the traditional models, professional learning. And they focus a lot on competencies. They focus a lot on bringing experts in to train or coach the current leaders. But there's not enough, we think, where we're trying to develop the awareness of the leaders themselves, try to really kind of give them a way to interrogate who are they and how are their values in action, and then being able to also strengthen their ability to tell leadership stories. As Morosi points out, leadership development is a complex process that involves more than advancement of one individual, but occurs through interaction of the individual with the social and organizational environments. But often this part of the leadership development is not visible. So we thought that if we can help people, leaders, to try to use a approach to understand how their identities, their biases, their lived experiences have informed their values, their beliefs, their decision-making and action, and also developing their capability and ability to communicate to others about who they are and how their values and action define leadership, we think this will help to develop trust between them and those people who believe them and follow them, as well as inspire others to do more of this. So we're looking around and we really, really like Simmons' approach. She's among the first of the leadership development experts to advocate using storytelling to unveil the invisible parts and also to demonstrate not just vision, but values in context. We focused on two types of leadership stories, the who I am story and the values and action story. So the who I am story are stories, leadership stories that demonstrate who the leaders are when they interrogate and reveal an aspect of themselves that, for instance, some values that's been honed through their experience, especially the marginalized experiences, lived experiences that's otherwise invisible. So this will be anchored in their professional identities, developed through their personal stories, and then this will then provide a counter narrative that illustrate how leaders gain the courage to lead. We also believe that it's really important for leaders to also tell the values and action stories because these demonstrate how they weave their core values into their daily lives and they illustrate how they are engaging in the practice of transformative leadership. So what this looks like is when we were started engaging, as Margaret was saying, the chapter authors who are superintendents of schools and principals, we asked them to begin by thinking about specific incidents, events where some negotiation took place. We asked them to write about memorable incidents, to use thick descriptions to tell us about the context, the people, the place, the issue, the tension, the struggles. We asked them to reflect on their negotiations. And as a part of that, we basically help the leaders to engage in this critical self-reflexive model for leader development. So the model in completion looks like this, where it has several iterative steps. We believe that when leaders first inquire and write, where they use this critical self-reflexivity to interrogate the intersectionality and compose this who I am stories, they gain a much deeper awareness of how they arrive at where they are and what the values, how the values have been shaped. Then they connect their core values to their current practice. And then so they will then have to then really look at, okay, how am I putting these values in action, or maybe not. So then they can really see clearly the extent to which that they are applying their values, or maybe there are some gaps. And then by trying to bridge the gap that they see and the values that they have, they are also in the process of transforming themselves. Then by telling these stories to others, they will gain trust of others, and they will show and illustrate and demonstrate how their values were shaped and how this has driven their practice in context. So these are the different authors that we have invited. We're just going to give you a quick sense so you get a sense of where they are located. Many are school leaders in urban districts. We have superintendents in large school districts in California. And we also have leaders from suburban school districts. And now I'm going to invite Margaret to share with you a little bit of a gallery walk of the leaders' stories.
And I thank you, Aubrey. And I must say, I really encourage anybody who's interested in this book to pick up these stories. They're compelling. One of the things that Aubrey didn't explain completely, and I'll just go back over it, because both Aubrey and I tried the process on ourselves. We tried to think about who we were. And I must say it was a very difficult task. And I can only speak for what I produced, but the several pages that I produced, which Aubrey kindly read, were boring beyond belief and were just not worth anybody's time reading, frankly. So from that experience, Aubrey, particularly, I think Aubrey really had a sort of brainwave. What I was lacking in trying to explain who I was the sense of showing who I was. Being an academic and somebody who, you know, I do enjoy writing, but not fiction. And so probably didn't really understand what grasps a reader. So Aubrey helped me and all of the students and the chapter authors realize that in order to get the richness of who they were across, they had to develop a way to show who they were rather than tell. And I found this I found working with students and I do think of them as students, but they are all professionals, was very helpful for me as a professor, helpful for me as somebody who advises people how to write. But for the students, It was a very difficult task. Each one of them, I have to say, by the end, came back to us and said, "Thank you for doing this. It has been really helpful." But to do it was not easy at all. So now I'll talk a little bit about each of the ones, but really encourage you to pick up these stories. So Khadija here, who's right on the screen, uses the metaphor of the warrior within to describe how she developed a strong inner self that helps her successfully navigate racism and sexism that she encounters daily. Anne, her leadership journey started with her family's escape to the United States from war-torn Vietnam. Growing up in a diverse community of Philadelphia, she felt more at home among the Black community than she did among the Vietnamese refugees. Nicole describes herself as an educator by day, travel lover, and music connoisseur. With her mentor's support, Nicole found the courage to pursue her doctorate despite dealing with experiences of ageism, racism, sexism, and the fear associated with feeling like an imposter. Growing up in biracial San Diego, Gina was one of the very few multiracial students in her school. She was always labeled as other, but she valued both cultures she was born into. Her loving Filipino family taught her the importance of education and the desire to look after those who were less fortunate. As a Puerto Rican immigrant, Yonaira was raised in an ultra-conservative Christian household. Expectations were that she would set a positive example of an obedient and faithful daughter. With such a traditional Latin community, she was not encouraged to be a leader. And Julie writes about growing up gay in California in the 70s and 80s. Raised in a warm, loving Roman Catholic family, she describes the loneliness of a lack of role models, information, and support. And born in Brooklyn, New York, Jabari grew up in Pennsylvania. Feeling sometimes ostracized and ridiculed for being smart, he survived physical and verbal violence in the urban neighborhood in a very impoverished family.
So those were the different authors that we had invited, and I definitely echo what Margaret has shared. Their stories are truly compelling. It took them a while to write these stories also, but in the process, I think each of them grew much more confident about all the different parts of themselves. And they are using these different parts of themselves to become, I would say, even more effective and transformative leaders in their context. So we really have enjoyed this collaboration in every way possible. And we thought that for today, we wanted to engage you in some active learning activities if you are willing to do so. So I'm going to stop share and go into this active learning activities with you. So I am going to copy and post into the chat something that I'd like you to think, ink, and then share. So let me just do that. I'm a little slow, so sorry about that. So if you can, now it's in the chat, where would you start if you wanted to write a Who I Am story? How has marginalization shaped who you are? Reflect deeply on how institutional racism, sexism, homophobia, and discrimination have shaped your identity. So again, just take time to think, and then if you're willing to ink, and then we'll share. If it helps, I just shared what I wrote when Margaret and I were working on this ourselves.
Aubrey, that date is the date when you wrote that, is it? July 6, 2023? Ah.
Yeah. Yep. That's when, how long ago? This project took a while.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So
If I can
go
jump
ahead.
in,
Go
Aubrey,
ahead.
one of the reasons it took a while was going back to that inability of most of us to show rather than tell. And so it really, we would read the drafts that the authors were coming up with, and then we would say, instead of telling us that you had a dreadful experience running a board meeting, show us the board meeting. And that, of course, takes much more time and effort. So that's why it took so long.
I think I struggled to write just a few sentences. I mean, just the first question about where to start is pretty difficult by itself, right? Is this do I describe myself like as a family member, as a segregated person, as a early career scholar? What's the starting point to say who I am?
I think that's really interesting, actually. And I took ages to write something because I was thinking about it and was honest about it being a difficult question. And then I was reflecting back on one of the slides that you had about values and my research interest. When I was completing my thesis, this was based on values, and I try and live sort of my values in the work that I do. And so for me, I think I'd probably start there and then use that as a foundation and explain why those are my values through my experience. But it is really hard. I think you're absolutely right. That was tricky question to ask us today.
I think that partly one of the challenges of this exercise is, although we are revealing the vulnerable side of us, and as leaders, that's the side that we often shy away, and that's for me, that's the side that I'm most protective about. Being afraid to speak about what's vulnerable to you. And this is not an easy exercise because you are literally saying that what broke you and what made you today.
And I guess it's also, I completely agree with you there, Donnie. I think that was a really kind of quite a profound thing to say, but also there is some element of fear of judgment sometimes if you don't know the people who you are engaging with. And I guess and particularly as researchers, there's that need to develop trust very quickly. It's about trust, isn't it? That the people that you are sharing that information with are going to be respectful. I think that's important as well, isn't it?
I think that's really important, actually, because I've sort of sat back about this because I'm too easy to tell you exactly how I feel. I'm an albino. I've had a very difficult life in my early years. I had to go to a special school. It was not a pleasure. Later on, when I became a teacher, I didn't want to have some of the aggravation for the kids that I was dealing with. They were in special schools themselves. It was so, therefore, I'm quite open about this in a way because you can see my hair. You know, I'm now coming out the 70s, so it doesn't matter so much. But I think I found that I had to say how things were because I would go to a pub and there would be fights. They'd have a look at me, I'd be in a fight. It just happens. So the the way that people are dealing with this are depending on their backgrounds. I was a working class person, disabled, went to special schools, blah, 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 and I had to fight my way all the way through. So that when I became a senior teacher in schools and then went to Hackney and whatever, it meant that I had to fight all the way through. In actual fact, doing the PhD at the time, I mean, it's quite 10 years ago now, but even then, the early part of doing a doctorate, I had to meet with a number of people at the time and think, you're going to see me that I'm nearly blind, blah, blah, blah. And that's going to be problems in its own. So I've had to fight my way through off. So in a way, I don't care about saying about how I feel. And if I'm not happy, I'll let you know. So it's that sort of thing. Whereas other people that have already are going to be very wary about what they want to say because of their backgrounds and so on and so forth. So it's a very big mix.
Yeah, we definitely experienced that. Margaret and I quickly realized that both of us have a tendency to mask our our personal vulnerabilities with all these academic accomplishments, perhaps that we have built up over time. It's like armor that we have been wearing. So when we realized we were doing that, even in this context, so we were tearing each other's work apart. It's like, okay, go deeper, please. Where did you really struggle? What really happened? And so we realized that trust was really, one has to feel safe and one has to feel that they have a space that they can really do this work with someone who is in support of them. And that was the relationship that we end up having with the chapter authors, where they definitely feel that they can be safe with us, but they also initially were much more easier to say, I accomplished that, I did this. And then Margaret and I, we were just we were gentle, but we were like, oh, so what did you struggle here? I don't know if Margaret want to add to that.
Oh, just the other extra little dimension was that once the chapter authors decided that they were doing this for themselves, but they were also doing this for others who might resonate, not necessarily with exactly the same story, but with how a person shows who they are and then shows what they do as a result of who they are. Once they sort of got hold of the reins of that wild horse, I think that gave them a much greater sense of purpose because they were writing for themselves, but they were writing to help other leaders see how they could do it too.
Yes. The last point I just make is the fact that I had to be quite open about myself because I did just recently completed some work on teaching assistants. Teaching assistants have very, very difficult lives. If I go into schools and I'm going to do some research on this, then I've got to be very open about where I come from, and this is what happened to me, and oh, you're not getting decent pay. All right, okay, you're not going to get that sort of information if you're not being honest with. And you made a point as well about trust and building trust when you're doing research is absolutely essential. And so I feel that I've got to say where I'm coming from so it's clear and you've been honest for yourself and they will listen to you then. And that's what I found anyway with the research that I've done. So there you go.
Yeah.
May
And
I
it's
ask just
magical.
I'm so sorry.
That's all right. I just want to add that if you when folks have gone through this critical interrogation of who they are, what struggles they really had to overcome, what were the values that were honed through these challenging experiences, then it also gave them clarity in terms of what would be the guiding star or the guiding guidepost that they will use going forward, because they now know that these values have always been a part of them.
Yes.
And they can now name it. They know how it came about. They know they already have struggled to develop this, and it was something that usually is tied to a really deep personal experience that they've had. So when they go into future encounters where they had to make a decision, they now know that, hey, I have this value behind me, and I know that I truly believe in it, and I'll just use that as the way that I'll move forward making decisions. I believe that was another part of what came out of having gone through this experience. And as you can see, a lot of the chapter authors, although Margaret just did a very quick gallery walk around them, everybody had to reveal something about themselves. So first was writing these stories, and then we've been presenting this at different contexts. So they will read out loud their stories in professional organizations, professional conferences in front of hundreds of people, even in their own context as part of their leadership story. And I think each time they tell it, they really made it a part of their message, because they can then link always who they are into why they're doing what they're doing, what is driving them. And that, I think, again, is this part of like deepened self-awareness, deepened understanding, just will help us in some ways navigate more successfully all the uncertainties and the rapid changes that's arising right now.
May I ask a question about what Professor Aubrey was just mentioning? And I really appreciate the moment. I mean, I don't think I've attended Belma's events previously that triggered this kind of discussion. And I'm also thinking about when Donnie said things that broke you. But your question was things that have shaped you. So maybe you are being shaped not on the way of being broken, but on the way of being cracked. And I think the metaphor of a crack is really meaningful because it's a space that opens so you can connect to others. So I think what Stephen was just sharing that I really value his testimony is, since I have to show myself and explicitly describe where I'm standing from, that allows me to connect with others. And
Yeah.
from then on, you can connect. So what I'm trying to say is that vulnerability, besides being just being the reason of our suffering, is also the scars that allows us to recognize who we are in order to be with others. If
Yeah.
I hope I explain myself. I'm not a native English speaker, so I do my best.
Excellent, AOC.
That was amazing. I think to add to what you were just saying, and I can see this from how you're communicating, we're also talking about emotion, aren't we? And sometimes I feel that in leadership, there are certain emotions that you're not really able to show, and to show that you're feeling that way. And it can be quite isolating for the person. I've worked with head teachers who have talked to me because I've come into school as an outsider, as an open person, and they've told me lots of things they probably wouldn't share with their staff members or their SLT, because they're very isolated.
Oh, yeah.
They're not able to show their true reaction to things because of, I guess, the expectations, the stereotypes that are involved with leadership. And also on a personal level, as someone who I very much wear my emotions on my sleeve, and I felt that showing emotion and showing care, or sometimes frustration, some of the more kind of the less obvious emotions, has made me look vulnerable in a negative sense, whereas actually in reality, talking about values, I think emotion is such an important part of what we do. And maybe if leaders were in a position where they felt free and able to show more emotion and show, different sides of themselves in terms of inclusivity and connection with their staff, it may allow for maybe a more collaborative, inclusive approach to leadership.
Can I make a comment? I think that's really to the point. I think opening oneself up, as Jose just said, I love the image of the crack. That's a really powerful way to what I hear you when I listen is I've opened myself up a little crack so that I can receive you. And what Beth's just said resonates a great deal from the point of view of gender, because fortunately or unfortunately, we've been raised in ways, in many countries, not in all, but we've been raised in ways for women to feel that they're able to, at times, express themselves through their emotions, and men not. But then when a woman takes on a leadership role or is thrust into a leadership role, the showing of the same emotion will be read very differently from the way a man will show emotion. I think of some of our political leaders. There have been times when Obama has been seen with tears in his eyes, and that has been a very positive moment. But Hillary Clinton at the same time, and for many reasons that are not anything to do with what I'm talking about, but Hillary Clinton's tears were not seen the same way. So some of what we are doing with this professional development is to help everybody see that playing field. We would be very naive if we were to say to work with leaders in the field and give them a sense that showing themselves and their emotion all times in any circumstance is going to be a positive experience. It isn't. And so part of what this technique helps us to do is to help the individual understand who they are and to help them see, first of all, whether their values and actions do reflect who they are, because they don't always. I mean, that's, again, human. The rhetoric drives us. And so we find ourselves using phrases and terms that we are expected to when we are leaders. But if we really drill down, that's not quite what we believe. So part of it is to help us understand and maybe to find opportunities to reject that rhetoric. But the other part of it is to try to get hold of the narrative. Storytelling is such a powerful way to frame things. And so when you share these opportunities will depend on how you are getting hold of the narrative. So I have made, for example, if I go back into my own leadership situations as dean, of course, there were never right and wrong decisions. There were always decisions that benefited this group versus decisions that would have benefited that group. And so in order to help perhaps those decisions be understood in context, I might use some part of who I am to explain why I had to make that difficult decision. And that's getting hold of that narrative. My vulnerability had a point.
That's lovely, Margaret. I'm just thinking that in this whole conversation that we are having, one of the main, shall I say, emphasis that we often tell to our students is about developing your leadership identity. And looking at this exercise helps develop that identity that you have as a leader, because often leaders, we think, we communicate, we make decisions, we relate to others, and it's often shaped by our life experience, shaped by our values, and the sort of challenges that we encounter. And this exercise helps to develop that identity that you have as a leader, so that people know who you are as a leader and why do you think and make decisions in such a way. So that's excellent.
Yeah, thank you. We wanted to make this book something that folks actually can use as for their own self-development and also to communicate with others. So we added in various questions at the end of each chapter just to kind of help people to really think about specific questions that they may want to think about after they've read the chapter, so they can begin to think about what's resonating with me. Why do I really like it? Why can I accept it? And we also, when we get to the last chapter, we actually provided a lot of resources to help folks to begin to write the who I am stories, the values and action stories, but also suggestions about peer reviews and all sorts of things. So we really want this book to be something that anybody can pick up and just review it and then think about, this is where I want to start thinking about this.
Wow. So I think some Jose has said already about the different nature of the conversation that we've just been having, perhaps to other presentations. But I think the fact that it's really important that the work that you've done, but it's a tool to help people explore who they are and how that their experience has shaped how they lead, adds another layer of I'm just a massive advocate for research and publications that help and have impact. And I think that what you've done there is absolutely going to do that. And I'm thinking, I need to read your book. That's my action point from this, is I need to read your book.
And on that note, Aubrey, could you kindly share with us for us here and also for the benefit of those who are not able to join us, but we are going to host this recording on the Belmas website, so that our members and those who have missed this session can always tune in and listen to this talk. So for the benefit of the audience who are not present and for us here, could you share about, is there some discount, some special rate that we get for the book as part of the talk today as well?
We can reach out. We used to have discounts, and I think they do offer on the Routledge website. But outside of the Routledge website, I think you may be able to find also other discounts. Margaret, would you like to talk about anything?
Well, I think it's up to us to ask our editor at Routledge, and I see no reason why Belmas members couldn't be given some kind of a discount. So we will talk with Heather.
Experienced person.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Margaret. That's a great offer. I was reminded, I've read, Margaret, some of your work. I used some of your work in my own thesis a decade or so ago now. And I was reminded while you were talking of Megan Crawford's book, Emotional Leadership, as well. But just for your information, just in terms of tying that all up, in terms of the discount code and everything else, when the recording goes on the website, the team put any links that have been given underneath it. And you might not be aware, but this is the start of a bank holiday weekend here in England this weekend. So it's quite common for people to take the Friday off when they're already given the Monday off. So I know that we'll get lots of people watch the recording of this, because I know that they're already not in work today. So they'll have on their to-do lists because they will have registered for it in the first place. So they'll be sent the link, and anything you send to us will then be sent out to the people who registered with it. So when your editor comes back to you, do send that in to us, to any of us, and we'll make sure that it's on the website in the same place. It was such an interesting session today, everybody. Lovely to meet you too, Aubrey. Lovely conversations and additions to the conversation there, Stephen and Jose. Really nice to listen to.
It's been fabulous. Thank you so much. And Donnie, thank you for organising this. It's perked up my afternoon. I've got lots to think about, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Aubrey. Thank you very much, Margaret, for joining us. It's been really insightful, and it's really an eye-opener. And I think that this is something that I think we all appreciate, and many others who are going to hear this recording will appreciate this exercise. And it's something for us to reflect that as we are busy, leading others, is sometimes it's good to just have a reflection on ourselves as well. So that's beautifully titled in your book as well. And we appreciate, and please send us some resources of that links that you have. We will share it as part of the links, because Belmas has customized a new website and it's really user friendly and it's easy to find information. And one of the benefits of our members who could join us during live sessions and other times is that they get access to such brilliant webinars and talks like this, and the resources that comes along with it. So thank you very much, Aubrey, Margaret, and thank you, Deb, for joining us as well. So I know, Deb, you have so many other things to do, but Deb has always been the champion and the biggest supporter on all our activities, So she's the optimum of what I will call an energetic leader. So thank you very much, Deb, for joining
Thanks,
us.
Donnie.
And
there is a new book, talking of being an energetic leader, there is a new book out by another Belmas member called Lewis Fogarty on just self-leadership. It came out just a month or so ago, so it's very current. I got him to come and do a talk to my students. Another energetic leader, right? So a lecturer at the University of Brunel, finished his doctorate a few years ago. I think he's got 3 children under 5, but runs 4 nurseries as the leader, right? So just talking about that, so how he found time to write a book on self-leadership, I have no idea whatsoever. But the session he did for my students was terrific. So just in terms of pulling out your themes and finding the overlap that Belmas members might find interesting, I thought that was worth a quick shout out.
thanks a lot, Deb. And with that, we wrap up the evening. So thank you, Beth, for joining and leading the sessions as well. And Aubrey and Margaret, we hope that you produce another awesome book and we will have another chance to hear from you again. Thank you very much.
Lovely to see you all this afternoon. Thank you very much, everybody.
Lovely
Have a good
evening.
weekend.
Bye-bye, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Have a nice day.